The topic is inclusive education for deaf and hard of hearing students, challenges and strategies. Now, the agenda for this presentation introduction, literature review, teaching strategies in Kazakhstan, and will be conclusion. So the purpose of this essay is to study the problems and the strategies of inclusive education for deaf and hard hearing of students, paying special attention to comparing world practice with Kazakhstani conditions. This study aims to identify key barriers in politics, pedagogy, and the language development, as well as to evaluate the effectiveness of bilingual approach, advanced technologies, and the inclusive teaching methods. So if we consider the historical context, so from 1950s, there were concepts of inclusive education to address the diverse students' needs. Then in 1994, were signed the Salamanca Declaration in Spain. This declaration recognized the rights of persons with special educational needs. The global expansion transitioned from policies in developed countries to developing ones. So by supporting the laws guaranteeing the development of inclusive education system. Then there were United Nations conventions, Article 24, and it stated that education should be inclusive and accessible for everyone, promote equal opportunities, and prohibit discrimination based on disabilities, emphasize the needs for systematic and compliant implementation. So here is the some challenge, and we will talk about the bilingual approach and the comprehensive, inclusive approach. So as a challenge, here consider the persistent gap between policy, practice, and the outcomes globally. Also there is a lack of a clear conceptual framework for inclusivity, and the focus needed further focus will be needed on deaf and the hard hearing of students. Bilingual approach. This is a combines of sign language and the spoken language instruction, which is promotes cultural immersion for deaf students. Aim to reduce isolation and alienation, language and the communication difficulties in educational environments. So comprehensive inclusive approach focus on school placements, which is in mainstreaming schools, which include the mainstreaming students, building design. It means accessible infrastructures, curriculum adaptations, and the pedagogical reform, assistive technology, for example, hearing aids, subtitles, sign language interpreters, and the improved acoustic for hearing impaired students. So if we consider the literature review of this presentation, yeah, we can start from the 1880s, where was the early self-advocacy in deaf education. Deaf individuals, in that time, deaf individuals founded schools with the teachers and the staff who were deaf. And these schools emphasized that those schools emphasized the use of sign language for instruction and communication. Um, mm, Such information was noted, was pointed by Lett in 2005. The decision, there was a time also about the decision to ban the sign language. Teachers of hearing students decide to ban and avoid to use the sign language in deaf education across Europe and North America. Um, uh, and deaf individuals were excluded from decision making. Decision making. Immediate impacts that deaf teachers were removed from classrooms. Um, Sign language lost academic and linguistic recognition as a research topic. This was emphasized in the research work Wilcox of Wilcox et al. 2012. And the strict measures for who support the sign language. Students were forced to sit as a punishment. There was that the students were forced to sit on their hands or forbidden from using finger spelling. And this was mentioned in the work of Contra in 2017. uh, inclusive education. So the modern inclusive practices include the integration with hearing peers, development of oral speech through assistive hearing aids, for example, like cochlear implants and others. Others technologies, other access to mainstream curricula. Persistent issues, there were late exposure to language leads to language deprivation, affecting speech literacy and the cognitive development, which was mentioned by Cheng and Maybury in 2019. And the complexity of inclusive classrooms for deaf and hard-hearing students. This also mentioned in the work of Todorov et al. In 2022. So here is also teaching strategies and approach or technologies for deaf and hard-hearing students. So first one is advanced hearing technologies, which includes cochlear implants and the hearing aids. The aim of these technologies to address communication barriers, uh, varied improve varied outcomes. The outcomes of using such implants, like a cochlear implants and the hearing aids, and there will be improved speech and the hearing, but do not fully eliminate academic and the literacy challenge. So the limitation of using such implants and the reliance on technology does not address the broader linguistic and the social needs of all deaf and hard hearing students. Bilingual sign language education is the evidence of using of this sign language, um, that strong sign language skills are reliable predictor of better literacy and academic performance, which was emphasized in the work of Demery and Meyer in 2014 and Hormeister et al. 2022. Bilingual models offer a safety net for deaf and hard-hearing students with diverse linguistic abilities, a supportive framework for language acquisition and the cognitive growth. How it can be implemented effective in specialized bilingual schools and the inclusive classrooms where sign language is used alongside spoken language. Though the academic challenge and the progress, persistent issue, the fourth grade threshold, many deaf and hard hearing students have when they graduate, they have the level of fourth grade students. Counter evidence, the research showed that potential for parity with hearing peers when proper support is provided. It means when the education of the deaf and hard hearing students is combined with the normal hearing students, it showed the effective outcomes. So uh, now, if we talk about the English in the English context, how can be taught the English to deaf and hard hearing students? First of all, English as a uh, language, lingua franca across fields such as science. It used in the fields such as science, medicine, business, and the media and the internet and internet. In the Kazakhstani context, in the educational reform, they were signed they were launched the reform like a Trinity of Language project in 2010, which is promoted by the first president of Kazakhstan, Nursultan Abishlam Nazarbayev. The aim of the launching of such project is to promote the three language, promote the three language, Kazakh language as a state language, Russian is a language of inter-ethnic communication, and the English is a tool international collaboration and the integration into global economy. So inclusion and the challenge. Inclusion identified as a priority in Kazakhstan from the 2011 to 2020 as a program for educational development. It's in 2010. Advocates education for all, emphasizing inclusive practice for students with disabilities, and the gap in strategy. Policies fail to offer concrete guidance for implementing inclusive education in schools. So here is the here is the educational approach for the deaf and the hard hearing impairment students. So first one is the oralism. It is adopted in 1880s to integrate deaf and hard hearing students into hearing society. The impact of oralism as a suppressed sign. It's a suppressed sign language and marginalized deaf culture. Teachers enforced oralism through mottos like behave yourself, don't sign. This information was mentioned in the work of Domagala Zisk in 2013. Current communication strategies include lip reading and the finger spelling. Lip reading, it means lip reading is used is recognizing visible speech patterns. Only 30 and 35% of sounds are understandable from lip movement, and words with similar visual patterns create significant challenges. And the finger spelling involves manual representations of letters for spelling words or names, particularly useful for teaching English vocabulary. Um, so the challenge in Kazakhstani deaf and hard hearing education, insufficient development of Kazakh Russian and the sign language in deaf and the hard hearing education, and graduates often lack fluency in this language, and leading to low literacy and reading skills, which is mentioned by Aitimova and Bekturganov in 2018. And the bilingual education advocacy. So this is supported by UNESCO. There's bilingual education, which was supported in 1994 by UNESCO. Bilingual education combined spoken and the sign language, which shows promising outcomes globally. And as a conclusion, here is given the recommendations for progress and the future goals. As a recommendation for progress, it should there should be adapted bilingual education and the improved policy frameworks. Also, there should be leverage technologies if we want to take the effective outcomes from the teaching deaf and hard hearing students. So how can be adapted the bilingual education? It should be incorporated sign language alongside spoken and the written language, provided training for teachers in bilingual methods and deaf hard hearing specific teaching strategies. And how can be improved policy frameworks, and they should be developed detailed, actionable plans for inclusive education in Kazakhstan, ensure recognition and the promotion of sign language in classrooms. And what kind of technologies they should be? They should be utilized advanced hearing aids, cochlear implants, and the assistive technologies. So the future goals, and they can be foster a supportive, inclusive learning environment that respects both cultural and linguistic identities of deaf and hard hearing students. Empower deaf and hard hearing students to achieve academic and social parity with their hearing peers. So here is the references. That's it. Thank you.